In the rush of this world, where everything seems to move a little too fast, Cancer, your presence often carries a different tone. Not detached from life, because you have loved deeply, worried endlessly, stayed up through long nights for things other people never even noticed. And yet, through all of it, there is still a softness in you that hasn't been worn down by time. Sometimes people look at you and quietly say you haven't changed much, that your eyes still hold something clear, almost untouched, that your smile doesn't seem weighed down by the years. You may just smile and let it pass. Because you know what you've walked through. You remember the silent nights. You remember the times you pulled back just to heal in private. You know you were never shielded from life's storms. And yet, what people sense in you may not be surface at all. It's the way you carry your emotional world. You don't rush to deny sadness. You don't force yourself to appear stronger than you feel. When pain visits, you allow yourself to feel it. When joy arrives, you open your heart without suspicion. That honesty with yourself creates something gentle inside, like the surface of a lake under moonlight, still, but never stagnant. Cancer has always been tied to the moon, to quiet cycles, to change that happens without announcement. The moon does not compete for light. It does not demand attention. It simply reflects and reminds us that everything moves in phases, full, fading, returning. Perhaps you carry that rhythm within you. When you're tired, you retreat. When you need protection, you close the door. But when you're ready, you open your heart again. That flexibility keeps your soul from freezing in one state. Many people grow older wrapped in thicker armor. They learn to silence their feelings. They learn to move faster, so they never have to pause and face what feels fragile. You, even when you wish you were tougher, never fully abandon your softness. You hold old memories with reverence. You protect relationships quietly. You still feel something when an old song plays, or when a simple family dinner brings warmth back into the room. That connection to small, meaningful things keeps your inner world from drying out. The youth people notice in you may not live in your skin or your posture. It may live in how you see life. You see responsibility, yes. Pressure, yes. But you also see meaning, connection. While little openings to love a bit more, when someone still allows themselves to care, to be gentle with others and with themselves, their energy feels lighter, brighter. You also have a quiet way of caring for yourself. When overwhelmed, you return to what feels familiar. When your heart feels tangled, you choose silence instead of explosion. Those small acts are like watering a garden consistently. No noise, no display. Just enough to keep something green and alive. Maybe that quiet self-care is what keeps your breathing steady in the middle of chaos. This isn't a promise that Cancer will always remain this way. Every person walks a different path. There are complicated turns, unexpected bends in the road. But if you recognize that a part of your softness still lives, a part that still trembles at small beauty, that may be something worth protecting. Not to compare, not to prove, just to remember, in a world full of noise, you have kept a warm heartbeat. And when night falls, when everything slows down, you might ask yourself quietly, has this softness carried me through more storms than I ever gave it credit for, without forcing me to turn to stone? And maybe, in that still moment, you'll hear your own story continuing to move, gently, like moonlight beyond the window, still illuminating the path ahead, without needing to rush to name what comes next. And if you keep listening to that rhythm, you may begin to notice something very subtle. Deep within you, there is always a current moving. But not loud like a waterfall crashing down, not violent like waves colliding in the open sea. It feels more like the tide, rising and falling under the moonlight, quiet, steady, gentle, yet enduring. Cancer has long been connected to the image of the moon, and the moon never stays fixed in one shape. When it is full, it shines completely. When it wanes, it withdraws softly into shadow, and in its own time, the light slowly returns. There is no rush in that rhythm, no force, no urgency. It simply unfolds as part of the natural sky. Perhaps you carry a similar rhythm within you. You don't meet change with harsh resistance. When everything feels overwhelming, you step back. When your heart feels tired, you return to what is familiar, to places scented with memory, to spaces that feel safe. Some may see your retreat as weakness, but maybe it is simply the way you protect your energy. Not everyone allows themselves to rest at the right time. Many keep running, keep pushing, keep proving something, even when exhausted. You are different. When emotions rise, you feel them. When silence is needed, you are not afraid of it. Those quiet pauses are not avoidance. They are renewal. Like the moon hidden behind clouds, it hasn't disappeared. It is only preparing to appear again. Accepting your inner cycles has helped you remain soft. You understand that not every day is bright, not every moment is strong, and instead of blaming yourself for slowing down, you've learned to listen. To your body when it's tired, to your heart when it's hurt, to your intuition when it whispers. It may be time to shift direction. When that emotional rhythm is honored, it creates a gentle sense of rebirth. Each time you allow yourself to feel sadness and then move through it. Each time you close inward and later open your heart again. You renew yourself. No announcement, no audience. It happens in quiet layers, where only you can sense the change. And perhaps because you don't constantly resist life's transitions, time does not weigh as heavily on your presence. When someone stops fighting everything, the body softens, the mind relaxes, the eyes grow gentler, the voice grows warmer, not because time has stopped, but because rigidity has loosened its grip. Cancer often carries an inner world, like a small room with a light always on. When the outside grows loud, you have somewhere to return. When life shifts too quickly, you have a quiet corner to reorganize your feelings. But that inner space is not escape, it is preparation. And every time you return there, you understand yourself a little more. You may not call it strength. You may think you're simply following instinct. But knowing when to move forward, when to step back, when to speak, when to stay silent, that is a rare emotional intelligence. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It is like moonlight slipping through a narrow window, bright enough to see the path ahead, yet never blinding. And when you accept that life has phases, just like the moon, you stop judging yourself for the days you feel less than full. You begin to understand that absence is sometimes part of a cycle, not a permanent loss. That understanding lightens the heart. It allows you to move through change with quiet flexibility. Maybe this rhythm has taught you how to flow instead of getting stuck, taught you that nothing needs to be held forever, taught you that change does not always mean danger. And in the way you move through your life's transitions, there is still something gentle, something luminous. Like the moon continuing its silent companionship through another long night, steady, present, softly lighting your way forward. And once you've grown familiar with that rise and fall, you seem to grow familiar with something else too, holding close what truly matters. Not everyone can do that. Some people, after enough disappointment, choose to close down. They disconnect from their feelings so they won't hurt as much. They place memories into sealed drawers, afraid to touch them. They tell themselves that growing up means becoming less sensitive. A cancer rarely severs that cord completely. You remember, not to live in the past, but to honor what once moved your heart. A family dinner, an old hand you once held, a sentence that seemed small at the time, yet warmed you for years. Those memories don't have to become burdens when you allow them to simply be part of your story. You feel, even after disappointment, you don't lock your heart all the way. Maybe you become more careful, more measured, but you don't turn cold. That sensitivity can exhaust you at times, yet it is also what keeps your inner world from drying out. You return to meaningful moments not to cling, but to remind yourself how deeply you once loved, how sincerely you once cared. That ongoing connection to your emotional core keeps a small flame alive inside you. It's not a roaring fire, so it's steady warmth, enough to carry you through colder days. There is a sincerity in you that people notice almost immediately. When you listen, you truly listen, not just with your ears, but with your eyes, with your attentive silence. When you care, it isn't social politeness, it is presence. And when you respond, your words are thoughtful, measured, carrying an unspoken wish not to wound anyone further. That gentleness carries a very specific kind of youthfulness. Not immaturity, not inexperience, openness. You still give yourself permission to believe. You still allow yourself to be moved. You still protect a soft corner in your heart that life has not completely hardened. And that openness has a vitality to it. When someone can still be surprised by something small, still smile at a simple kindness, still feel their eyes grow wet over a story that touches something deep, their soul has not closed. And when the soul remains open, the way they look at the world changes. They don't just see responsibility, they see meaning. Perhaps at times you have wondered if remembering too much, feeling too deeply, was a weakness. But maybe that capacity to stay connected is what has kept you from becoming rigid. When you allow yourself to access your truest emotional layers, you stay aligned with yourself. And when you are not disconnected from who you are, the noise of the outside world has less power to sweep you away. Cancer often carries an invisible thread, linking you to family, to those you love, to your core values. That thread may stretch. Say, it may loosen, but it rarely snaps. In a world that changes constantly, holding on to that inner anchor creates a sense of safety, and safety allows the heart to relax. When the heart is not always defending itself, it stays soft. When it stays soft, it still knows how to tremble. And when it can still tremble, there remains a trace of youth in the way you move through life. Not because time hasn't passed, but because you have not sealed shut the door to your emotions. The youth others sense in you may simply be your honesty with your inner life. You are not perfect. You have fragile days, but you don't deny yourself. You don't pretend you don't need anyone. And in that acknowledgement, there is something profoundly real. Maybe that is why people feel lighter around you. They don't have to wear a mask for long. They don't have to perform strength constantly. Your presence quietly reminds them that vulnerability is human, and it does not diminish anyone's worth. And as you continue holding what matters close, as you continue listening with that same gentleness, the story of your openness doesn't seem to end here. And as long as you keep that openness, as long as you allow yourself to be moved by what touches your heart, perhaps you've learned something essential, in your own quiet way. Emotions are meant to be moved through, not buried. Some people, under too much pressure, push everything down. They stay silent in their sadness. They smile while breaking inside. They tell themselves they must be strong, must endure, must keep going without slowing down. Over time, those layers of suppression begin to harden. So the face may look composed, but the eyes grow tired. Cancer rarely stays on that path for long. You may hold yourself together for a while, but eventually your heart speaks. When you're sad, you don't completely refuse your tears. When you're overwhelmed, you give yourself permission to step back. When you're hurt, you look for safety to heal instead of pretending nothing happened. From the outside, those choices may seem small, but inside, they are like opening a window and letting the air circulate again. Emotions, when allowed to move, do not stagnate. And when they don't stagnate, the body softens. The breath deepens. So you may not consciously think about it, but every time you sigh and release something heavy, every time you confide in someone you trust, every time you hold yourself gently on a fragile day, you create a quiet flow within. That flow may not have a name, but it shapes how you show up, the way you enter a room, the way you tilt your head when listening, the way you rest a hand on someone's shoulder without needing many words. When emotions aren't locked away too long, your energy feels lighter. And that lightness is sometimes mistaken for youth, not because you haven't suffered, not because you've escaped pressure, but because you haven't allowed everything to build into an impenetrable wall. You give yourself pauses to release what weighs you down. You give yourself quiet nights to sort through what has happened. You accept that you are not always okay, and in that acceptance, something inside you relaxes. Cancer carries a natural instinct to care. When others need you, you show up. But what's even more precious is that when you need yourself, you are learning to show up too. Maybe it's cooking something familiar on a quiet evening. Maybe it's an honest conversation. Maybe it's simply sitting still and letting your emotions be named. Those moments don't weaken you. They make you real. And when someone lives honestly with their emotions, they spend less energy hiding, less energy maintaining an image that doesn't match what's inside. When inner truth and outer expression align, a quiet harmony forms. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. But people can feel it. They feel a certain ease around you. One, this isn't a promise that emotional expression guarantees endless freshness. Life still brings exhausting seasons. There are times we close off temporarily just to survive. But if you regularly allow yourself to process what you feel instead of burying it, you give your heart a chance not to turn to stone. And when the heart doesn't turn to stone, it can still tremble at kindness. It can still soften at another person's pain. It can still adapt when circumstances shift. That flexibility is like running water. It keeps the inner landscape from drying out. Perhaps that is why there is a certain gentleness in how you move through life. A voice that isn't too sharp, a gaze that isn't too heavy, a step that doesn't rush unnecessarily. And as you continue living with that emotional honesty, the story of how you care for the world and for yourself feels like it is still unfolding, revealing deeper meaning with every quiet breath you take. And once you've grown used to letting your emotions flow that way, you may begin to notice something else that feels completely natural to you. Care is not an obligation. It's instinct. Cancer rarely needs to be reminded to pay attention. You automatically notice when someone looks tired. You hear the subtle shift in a loved one's voice. You sense when someone is pretending to be fine while everything inside them feels unsettled. That sensitivity isn't something you learned from a book. It moves like a current already living in your heart. You turn toward home as an anchor. Not just a house with four walls, but the feeling of safety that comes from being fully yourself. You want to protect, to shelter, to create a space where others can lower their guard. And while you're doing that for them, you are quietly nourishing yourself too. When someone lives in a caring state, their energy tends to soften instead of sharpen. Sharpness has its place. It can protect, it can compete, it can push forward when necessary. But when sharpness becomes constant, the soul begins to tire. Living too long in defense tightens the shoulders, hardens the gaze, closes the heart. You, even after being hurt, don't choose to stay in that posture forever. You may become more cautious, more discerning, but you don't entirely lose your gentleness. And that gentleness holds a very particular kind of strength. Not the kind that dominates a room, but the kind that warms it. People often say that constant competition can make a person rigid. When every interaction is filtered through comparison, when every relationship is measured by gain and loss, the heart slowly builds thicker armor. You understand how the world works. You're not naive. But somewhere inside, you still try to hold on to a human perspective. You don't only ask, what do I get? You also wonder, what can I give? Nurturing energy, when balanced, makes the soul more flexible. You learn when to offer, when to pause. You begin to understand that caring for others doesn't mean abandoning yourself. That balance doesn't happen overnight. It forms through experience, through the times you gave too much and had to gently call yourself back, and through the lessons that taught you how to love without losing yourself. And it is precisely that process that keeps your heart from hardening. A flexible heart adapts. It doesn't snap in strong winds. It bends slightly, then finds its center again. That emotional flexibility often carries a quiet freshness, not innocence without wisdom, but openness without excessive armor. Perhaps that's why people feel something warm when they're near you. Not explosive enthusiasm, not overwhelming intensity, but steady presence. A sense that they can rest for a moment, speak honestly, lower the mask. And when you create that kind of space, you are nourished by it as well. Care isn't always easy. There are times you feel you give more than you receive. Times you wonder if gentleness makes you more vulnerable. But every time you choose to care consciously, without force, without blind sacrifice, you preserve something beautiful within yourself. That part of you doesn't need to prove anything. It simply exists, like a steady heartbeat. And as you continue walking with a heart that remains flexible, the story of your deeper connection to something sacred within seems to unfold quietly, revealing another layer of meaning just beneath the surface. And as you continue walking with a heart that remains flexible, what people feel in you may not live in the lines of your face, but in the frequency you carry. A kind of energy that's hard to measure, yet easy to feel. Maybe it's the way you still care deeply even after disappointment. The way you still protect what is fragile, even when the world isn't always gentle. But the way you still believe in meaningful bonds in a time when everything can change with a single swipe across a screen. That sincerity isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It simply lives in how you check on someone sincerely, in how you remember an important date, in how you place connection above short-term gain. And perhaps it is that steady sincerity that carries something timeless. This isn't about staying young forever, and it's not a denial that time leaves its marks. Time moves, the body changes, experiences carve new layers of understanding. But how a person carries time, that's a different story. Some people let time close them. You, even after being hurt, seem to hold on to something soft inside. And that softness doesn't weaken you. It allows you to keep feeling, to keep connecting, to keep opening when it feels right. Say, maybe the youth others notice is simply the result of not turning to stone. You haven't allowed disappointment to harden into permanent doubt. You haven't let old wounds become your entire identity. You've allowed yourself to learn, to adjust, to grow, without losing your ability to be moved. And if something in this speaks to you, perhaps you can ask yourself quietly, in my hardest moments, did I choose to harden or to soften? There are times when strength looks like steel, but there are moments when softness is what keeps the heart from breaking apart. Softness is not easy. It asks you to face your real emotions, to admit you still need others, to acknowledge that you still long for connection, still want to love and be loved in return. But when you don't deny those deeply human needs, you keep your inner world alive. Maybe youth isn't just a number. Maybe it's the feeling that you still want to care, still want to protect innocence, still believe meaningful connections are worth holding on to. When someone carries that belief after many years, there is a depth to their youth that runs far beneath the surface. And Cancer, perhaps this youthfulness is not something you chase. It's simply what happens when you keep returning to your own heart. When the world urges you to be faster, stronger, colder, you still choose to slow down a little, to feel a little more, to believe a little longer in the value of gentleness. Maybe that is your quiet strength. No need to prove, no need to compare, just to keep living truthfully, to keep that small flame inside from going out. And when night falls, when the noise fades, you might smile softly to yourself, knowing you did not lose the most tender part of your soul, the part that still glows quietly, lighting the road ahead with a warmth that is uniquely yours, steady, soft, and real.